Decorating Pages is a podcast dedicated to taking you behind the scenes of the designs of your favorite TV shows and films. Each episode, I'll be sharing design stories from some of Hollywood's most famous sets, interviews from set decorators, production designers, directors, and actors about creating the look of TV and film, about their design inspirations, and stories that take sets from page to screen. Hello, and welcome to Decorating Pages. I'm your host, Kim Wanup. Springtime. I love springtime. I love wind. I love when it's really windy. I like a little rain. I hate to work in the rain. Working in the rain is awful. I don't care what city you're in. When all your dressing's getting wet and it sucks. Yes, enjoying the springtime in LA. It's very nice. I have a sinus infection, I think, or a cold. So I'm going to try to make this a little fast because my voice is probably annoying. More annoying than usual. And how can that be? I wanted to thank some of the listeners who have reached out in the last week. I feel like I got a lot of little emails from people in this just past week. Like, I get them here and there and sometimes just a little blurb about the podcast and everything, which is so nice. Thank you. But I had questions from Bones and Veep and someone from my alma mater and a chick from Philly. Like, it was really nice. It was a very rounded bunch of questions and comments. So thank you. And if you have any comments or questions, as long as they're good, you can always email me at kimwanup@decoratingpagespodcast.com. And yeah, anything or any suggestions, or if you want to be on the podcast, if you think you can handle this, just email me. I'll talk to you. It's awesome. So I forgot to mention a week or so ago, I don't know, I know not everyone can get Emmy magazine, and I'm unsure if you can log in to get their magazine, but it doesn't have the month, but it's issue number 2 in 2022, and Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway are on the cover for We Crashed. But there is a wonderful article in here about the marvelous Miss Maisel and how the sets go into the 60s, and production designer Bill Groom and set decorator Ellen Christensen. I mean, I do love the sets as I'm watching it. There are some fantastic details in this. There's like a stripper club that she works at, and it's like vaudeville-ish, and this dressing room is just to die for. I mean, all of her wardrobe and everything is so fantastic also, but the sets they're phenomenal every season. But it's a really good article speaking to them about moving the show into the 60s and the color palette and the little changes that the characters had to make. And so I would definitely recommend if you could read that. It's in Emmy magazine. So I'm still watching that. What else is Wanup watching, you ask? I started Julia on HBO Max, about Julia Child, and I like it. I really like it. I keep thinking I just want Stanley Tucci in it. Is what I really want. But I think the chick who's playing Julia Child is really good. The sets are phenomenal. Also, Steve Cooper and Patricia von Brandstein are the production designers. Set decorators Tiffany Zupala and Vanessa Knoll are set decorating, it says. And so just really into Julia right now. I also finally started Ted Lasso, and wow, it's really funny. I mean, I knew it was going to be good, but I saved it. My brother's visiting this week, and me and my husband and my brother did like the whole season in 2 nights. So, yeah, really enjoying that. And then the conclusion of The Dropout was this week. Awesome. And which will lead me into next week's episode with set decorator Kimberly Leonard. So next week, Dropout, Kimberly Leonard. Awesome. So yeah, that's what I've been up to this week, besides trying not to be sick while I'm off, which is always what happens. You're off and then you get sick. It's like your body just gives out just a little bit to relax, and then it catches a cold. Whatever, I'm fine. I'll get over it. This is part 2 of my interview with production designer Marek Dobrowolski. His new film that was released in 2019 but is now being re-released, I believe, because of pandemic, is called I'll Find You. It's a story of young kids with talent, of an opera singer and a violinist, and they grow up together, dreaming of performing together in Carnegie Hall. But the Germans, and it's during like the concentration camps, and the invasion of Poland tears them apart. So it's rough, but it's a really good film. And he talks about shooting the whole film in his native Poland, and he was able to select historically accurate locations for scenes, and it really gives this film the period feel and of Nazi Germany, and really beautiful. We also talk about his start as a theater designer, which led to a series of 9 fairy tale TV movies in, I think, 1 year, which is crazy. His projects also include Mr. Mercedes, Last Action Hero, Under the Dome, Hitler Rise of Evil, which he won an Emmy for, his designs. And again, if you didn't get to hear last week's, we talk about The Walking Dead, which he is currently designing for its last episode. So I hope you enjoy. Did you say you're in Chicago? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Oh, how is it?
Cold. It was cold. It's kind of.
Yeah.
It was cold.
Well, springtime. Springtime, it'll just be cold and windy.
Yeah. Yes, cold and windy, and then every second day it changes. The weather changes. So.
Yeah, you're there working, or you live there?
Yes, I'm doing Justified, the reboot of Justified.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, I did 10 years ago, more. I think 12.
Wow.
I did a pilot with Michael Dinner, and then they did a series for 7 years, and Michael asked me again to do the pilot. Not a pilot, but we're doing 8 episodes. It's a reboot. It's based on an Elmer Leonard book called City Primeval.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael's directing 4 hours. Quentin Tarantino is directing 2, or maybe 1. We don't know yet if it's 1 or 2. And then, they're all together, either 4 or 3 other directors.
Oh, that's great. And so I'm assuming it's based in Chicago this time.
No.
No?
It's based in Detroit, but Chicago is because of the crew base, and also the fact that there's no tax incentive in Detroit. So you know how they prep and they shoot, and everything is about the taxes and the money.
I mean, it's a different skyline and all, but it can't be that bad. Location scouting.
No, but it's actually, Chicago's a beautiful city, and we shot here twice with Michael, because I did The Beast here with Patrick Swayze, which was a series that they did here. I didn't do the series, I just did the pilot. And then we did something which was called ATF. It was a pilot that never went anywhere. Also Chicago for Chicago. And Justified, we did in Kentucky. We did in Pittsburgh for Kentucky. And then they did the series in Los Angeles.
Right.
And we did Bionic Woman in Vancouver for MD City in the States.
I like when they do Atlanta for LA.
Oh, yeah.
I like when they go out of town to do LA. That's always.
I know. Can we do LA here?
Yeah. Then you have to put palm trees in instead of always taking them out.
Or I shot Mr. Mercedes for Midwest in Charleston. So we had to take the palms out.
Right. Mr. Mercedes was such a phenomenal series.
Yes, you're one of the few who saw it.
No.
Nobody has seen it.
Oh, no. I think a lot of people saw that series.
Yes, really?
I mean, I'm blanking on the the main guy's name, but what a character.
Brendan Gleeson.
I mean, what a fantastic character for him to to portray.
Yeah, he was a great actor. And I mean, you know, Stephen King's writing and David E. Kelley
Yeah.
Together are great. And I work with Jack Bender. We did.
I'm also a huge Jack Bender fan. I mean, from way back.
Oh,
Like
really?
every time. I mean, from Lost or like all the shows in the '90s that he did. Like, I don't know. He just really got around and had some really good.
Yeah. Jack is great. So we met on Under the Dome, another Stephen King, and we did 2 seasons, both in Wilmington, North Carolina.
Mm.
And then we did The Last Ship,
which was huge.
In Los Angeles. We did 2 seasons. I normally did 2 seasons, never do more, but one exception was Mr. Mercedes. We did 3.
You did all.
It's ending.
You did all 3. Did you know it was going to be like 30, like 3 seasons when they started?
We kind of knew.
Yeah.
Yes, I think we knew. I think David and Mike and Jack and Stephen King, they knew that it's a kind of a 30-something episode show. So they were kind of prepared for that. And it was, you know, with DirecTV, then was bought by AT&T. It was very badly released, and actually nobody saw it really, you know.
I binged it on on something.
Hulu.
Yeah,
It went
Hulu.
on Hulu later. It went on Hulu later, and then and now it's on Peacock.
Mm.
And Peacock was talking to Jack about doing it again, like a reboot, you know.
Oh.
Maybe it happens. Maybe it won't.
So did you read the books beforehand, or just stick to the script?
Sorry, the books were great.
Yeah. Sometimes you wonder, well, if they're writing it just for TV, how much of the book are they using? But it seems like with this, he was close.
Well, have you read the book?
I did not read the books, no.
Well, you should read the book.
Yeah, I guess if I'm a fan of the show.
You know, the book. The book is great, and Under the Dome is a fantastic book.
That I didn't read, but yeah.
But because it was done for CBS, then they had to really make it, you know, for CBS public.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was so great. The first episode, first year was great, and then the writing was kind of not so good, and they tried to please the censorship of CBS, you know, and stuff like that. And you can't do that with Stephen King if you don't have that.
Yeah.
That his approach to characters and the horrible things that they do because they're horrible people, you know.
Did he have? Did he have input on you know, the character sets?
He doesn't have input, you know. Jack developed a good relationship with Stephen, and Stephen always says that those are the best interpretation of his books.
But that's fantastic.
He might, you know, so that's nice. But they share, you know, information, and Jack shares information with him. With David E. Kelley, David wrote the scripts, and Jack interacted with David. I think they had some conversation with Stephen, and then we worked very freely in terms of adapting locations, ideas of where it is, and stuff like that. So David is very open to directors' inputs. You know, he just wants his message, dialogue, and characters to come through, and if it's a better idea for a better setup and location, then he's very open to change that, you know, which is kind of nice.
It must be, I mean, I think it was 3 times you worked with Jack Bender. There must be such a shorthand relationship you have with him in designing.
And Jack, I don't know if you know that Jack is a painter.
Oh, no. That's good.
Yes, Jack is a painter, and Jack did my portrait, so I'll show you the portrait. I know on the podcast you can't share the portraits, right?
That's all right. It's for me.
But no, Jack is a very creative artist, you know, and so maybe I'll find it. And he writes books, illustration books, like storybooks, and you should try to Google that, because his book, I found one book here in the bookstore of the Museum of Modern Art, or Museum of Contemporary Art. And the women at the museums, I said, "Oh, we have Jack Bender's. I love this book. This is the best book," and blah, blah, blah. And she didn't even know that he made other books.
Oh my God, that's fantastic.
And then I texted Jack a picture with me and the book and her and the museum. So he was floored about it and like that. And they kind of reconnected because he wrote another book just recently. And those are illustrations, not illustrations, but those are stories, you know, very interesting stories. I'm trying to find that picture.
I mean, it seems like he's always directing. How does he have the time?
Well, that's his relief.
Yeah.
Know, that's the
yeah, I guess we all find the time.
Yeah, the way he is sane, you know,
yeah.
Because if you don't have that, then it's very hard.
Something needs to keep us all sane.
Yeah.
Oh my God. That's fantastic. Yeah. It's a portrait of you.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Well, he's good. He's
Jack is good.
Yeah.
Good. Yeah. Google Jack Bender and you'll see some books, and you can order some books if you're a fan of Jack Bender.
Oh yeah. Well,
if you want Jack to sign a book for you,
and I had no
Jack to sign.
I had no idea. That's amazing. Yeah. It's always great. I mean, everyone is in the, you know, they're creative. It's no surprise that people have other creative outlets, but the time to do it is always something special.
Yeah, and Jack also writes. He wrote one script. His daughter is a writer. The other daughter is a costume designer. And there was a project, Beverly Hills Furrier. His father was a furrier in Beverly Hills.
Oh, wow.
And he was a furrier for the stars. And it's a very interesting story in the 60s where women wore furs and they went to the fancy restaurants and Spago, but I forgot the names of those restaurants. I was not around in Los Angeles, but
where are you from?
I'm originally from Poland.
From Poland. Mm-hmm.
I'm from Poland, and I came here on a Fulbright scholarship in the 80s. And then I worked in theater. I was a theater designer. Mm-hmm. And for several years, I worked off of Broadway in New York. And then I met through an agent manager, actually John Pryor's manager. I met Menahem Golan and Yoram Globus from Canon Films. Mm-hmm. And they asked me if I can design 8, actually it was 12 fairy tales.
I know.
Fairy tales.
I found it so interesting that like in the beginning of your career, you have the Frog Prince, Rumpelstiltskin, Beauty and the Beast, Snow White. I mean, I was like, wow, he got it's a nice thing to get little pigeonholed in just to get your creativity going with all these fairy tales, but what a great start.
So it was a great start, you know. As I said, I was a theater designer and opera designer, and in Europe I designed the operas and dramatic plays and Shakespeare and Verdi, and then I came to the States and I did some off Broadway. I worked with Sylvia Miles, with Diane Venara, with Joanne Woodward. So a couple of big stage actors and film actors. And then...
And yes. I mean, these you did like 2 or 3 a year. You were busting them out.
What, the fairy tales?
Yeah.
No, I did 9 in 12 months.
Oh my God.
Because what we did is the first one was Rumpelstiltskin with Billy Barty and Amy Irving, Steven Spielberg's then wife. Yeah. And her brother David Irving was the director. he was the chair of NYU Tisch School of Art and the film department, and now he's a senator at NYU, but he's still in the film department, one of the professors.
Oh my God.
And we did with Bill Barty and Amy Irving Rumpelstiltskin, and then Sean Connery's son, Jason, played the prince, I remember.
There were so many stars.
What?
There's so many stars in them.
Yeah, and then
Christopher Walken.
What happened? What?
Christopher Walken you have in Puss in Boots?
Yeah. So what happened? Stephen came to visit Amy, and Menahem was so thrilled. He wanted Stephen to direct something, but of course it didn't happen. And they decided that it's going so well in the middle of the shooting of the first one that we're going to do prep 2 and shoot 2. So I was prepping 2 and shooting 2 movies, and then we did in the row. You have it in front of you, right? The IMDb.
I have it.
Yeah, so maybe you can read it because I will have to look at it. I don't even remember. It's Sleeping Beauty.
Wait, I gotta go up to movies. Yeah, I mean, I was looking at it and I was like, wait, are these all and they're all like full-length movies. The Frog Prince, Rumpelstiltskin, yes. Beauty and the Beast, The Emperor's New Clothes.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast with John Savage and Rebecca De
Mornay. The Emperor's New Clothes.
With Sid Caesar.
Yeah. Snow White.
Yes, with Tanya Welsh and with Diana Rigg.
Red Riding Hood.
With Isabella Rossellini and Craig T. Nelson.
I love Craig T. Nelson. Puss in Boots with Christopher Walken.
Yeah, amazing.
Hansel and Gretel. I mean...
Yes, with Hansel and Gretel with John Warner.
Yeah. Who else was in this? Let me just... John Warner.
So the whole idea behind the series was that we started... and Cloris Leachman, of course, that played the witch. Yeah. And it started with a kind of a medieval world, and I said we have to start the first movie should be something which is medieval, and I can change the periods and finish in Baroque or Rococo, and that's what we did. I built this castle, and then we adapted the village, and then we adapted the interiors, and then we ended up in kind of a Emperor's New Clothes and kind of a Rococo version,
And
Baroque Rococo.
Did the theater background lend to those, especially being fairy tales, that these were able to convert to TV sets?
I think that's what drew Menahem and Yoram to me, and they hired me because I had that theatrical experience, the period experience, and I had very little film experience. And we went to Israel. We shot them all in Israel and in Italy. We did some exteriors in Italy. So everything was built. And it was for kids, but musicals, and they were very charming and some great characters. In Sleeping Beauty, my goodness, Sylvia Miles. Remember Sylvia Miles? Sylvia Miles, who played with Dustin Hoffman in Midnight Cowboy. She was the lady with the dog. What's his name? The cowboy.
John Voight.
John Voight, yeah. John Voight was trying to pick, or she was picking him up. And Sylvia Miles also was in one of the plays I did, upstate New York. That's when we met, and this was Long Day's Journey into Night. I think. Yeah, I should put Long Day's Journey into Night. So there were some interesting actors, and they were fun. It was a lot of fun. As I said, we did 9 and.
I can't believe you did so many in a short amount of time. But I feel it seems like you designed it so that you were able to convert those sets and allow them to shoot that way. I mean, that's
genius. That was the idea. That was the idea that when you come from a European background and history of art and all that, it's probably easier to figure this out. So because I know that you can have a medieval castle and you change some furniture and something, you add some elements, and you can be in the Renaissance, and you change some more, and you can be in Baroque, and then you add some more, and it's Rococo.
It's
so
magic.
I think that was the approach. Yeah,
so then, did you come back to LA after that to work, or did you?
No, I lived in Paris, and from New York, I went to Israel, and then I lived in Paris for a year. Tried to do some stuff there, some French, English productions that never happened, and after several months, maybe 6 months or something, I came back to the States. And I did the first movie with Todd Solondz directed for Propaganda.
Fear, Anxiety, and Depression.
Anxiety and Depression. Yeah. And Todd was discovered as the new Woody Allen. And he was a very funny guy.
Yeah.
And very weird and very eccentric. And then the movie didn't work out for him. I think there were too many things that he took on himself, because he was the writer, he was the leading star, he was the director.
Right.
And probably didn't have enough experience and didn't know which role at which point you have to play, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot.
And yes, that's a lot. The movie didn't come out the way he thought it could.
Plus he's acting in it. I mean,
because he's acting in it, yes. And then for a couple of years he was gone, and then he did the Dollhouse, or
I think it was
Happiness, yes. Yeah. And there were great movies.
Happiness is a very good disturbing movie.
Yeah, very good disturbing movie. I never reconnected with him because I moved to LA and he stayed in New York. I worked as an art director assistant art director with a great production designer, Janini Opuro.
Yes, she's my hero.
She's your hero, yeah. And with Robert Wise, it was his last picture. Taylor Hackford was the producer, and Howard Hawk Koch was the other producer. Later I met Taylor in Los Angeles. I was their director of Blood In, Blood Out, about the Chicano Mafia. So from New York, I did one or two more things there, and then moved to Los Angeles.
And then moved out.
Early 90s.
I mean, obviously, The Craft sticks out to me as a movie I saw many times.
So after the Blood In, Blood Out experience, where I worked with Bruno Rubel, an Italian production designer who worked in the States a lot, and he worked a lot with Oliver Stone. He did a couple of great pictures with Oliver Stone, and he connected with Taylor, and I was his art director, and became friends. And after that, I art directed one more film, which was the Last Action Hero.
Schwarzenegger.
And Eugenio Zanetti, Argentinian production designer.
Which at the time it didn't do well, but it's a decent film. I mean, it's not horrible.
It's a great film.
Yeah,
no, it's a spoof. It's a comedy.
Yeah,
I think the biggest problem of this movie was that the studio and the director could not figure out that it should be more of a spoof and less of an action picture. And John McTiernan, who did all those action great with Bruce Willis, or plays the cop. Die Hard. Yeah. Die Hard's is a great action director and did fantastic action. And here, it's a comedy of action, and the action is just a vehicle. And I don't think they pulled it together. And there was a lot of expectations, and then there was reviews. They even went so far that Sony paid for advertising on the rocket. One of the Apollo rockets went out in space, and they wrote Last Action Hero going to space. But the reviews were the dinosaurs ate Arnold because they released the first Jurassic Park
the same week.
So the same weekend, yeah. So it couldn't. But I've seen the movie recently, a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
With my kids. My son is 17 and my daughter is 15. And they loved it.
Yeah.
And I felt that there's a lot of good humor there, and the story is charming, and he's very good, very funny. And somehow it just the public never got it. You know?
Yeah, I don't know why. I think that is definitely a film that needs to be revisited. But and it was a huge budget. It's for the day.
It was the first $100 million.
Yeah. I think
so it was a big budget.
The pressure of that. But you know, did you like going back to art directing? Like, I know some people can go back and forth.
I never went back to art directing because my first movie I designed, I was never an art director.
Right. You just.
So I just did art directing for the only reason, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Sorry to admit, but I have to admit, when I lived in New York, I had to get into the union, the A25, and then when I moved to Los Angeles, I had to get in the union. So then movies started non-union very often, you know, and then people got into the union, those who have not been in the union, and then after that. After Last Action Hero, I continued. Oh yes, why I went back? Yeah, because in New York I was the production designer, so you can say that I went back to art directing. Yes, well, I just needed that experience. This studio, big Hollywood picture experience.
It is usually either that or the money, or hey, it wasn't busy and I thought I'd jump in, or there's not usually many designers that would want to go back and forth, because and as a decorator I wouldn't want to go back and forth, in a sense that like I just feel like I need to make the decision and move on and not let someone else make
it. It's a little different when you jump in from $5 million picture to $100 million picture.
Right.
So that experience is very valuable. You know Cindy Carr? She was the costume designer.
I know of her. I don't know her personally, but yes.
Cindy is great.
Yeah.
So she was the costume designer and did some fabulous things. And Eugenia is very creative, and he got an Oscar for. Oh my goodness, it was fantastic. 17th century England. No, I forgot what it was.
No, I don't know. In the 90s? No.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up.
Late 90s.
I think,
yeah, we can look it up.
But from then on, I mean, you're still busting them out. You're doing like 1 or 2 a year. I mean, you never take a break.
I don't stop. No, I never take a break.
You do not stop. Is there a time, because and I think what happens with a lot of us is the jobs just come in one section, so you go for it. But do you prefer working in TV now or films?
No, TV I think was a kind of a natural transition, because what happened, I did a lot of miniseries, and I liked the miniseries format.
Yeah.
Because the miniseries format is bigger than a feature, because you have more hours to fill. The budgets are a little smaller, but overall, they're bigger than standard TV at that time produced, network television. So, for example, if the first miniseries I think was that I did was it what? Scam, Fatherland. No, Scam was a TV movie. No, Scam was a TV movie with Christopher Walken and Bracco.
Lorraine Bracco, yeah.
Not Lorraine Bracco.
Yeah. Oh no.
But the miniseries after that, where if you look at the TV things, it could have been Into the West, or there was one before.
There was Monsters, Scam, Fatherland, Peter and the Wolf, and then Hitler, the Rise of Evil.
Yes,
and
Hitler,
then
the Rise
and
of
then
Evil.
Into the West it has.
Into the West. Hitler, the Rise of Evil
Yeah.
was the first miniseries with Canadian French director Christian Duguay.
Did you shoot that in Poland or Russia or?
No. We shot it in Prague.
In Prague.
We shot it in Prague, and in Prague, in the Barandov studio, I was able to rebuild. I traveled a lot in Munich, and because it was kind of based in Munich and in Berlin, all the beer houses or the famous places where the party met and where he operated. He was from Salzburg, so there was a piece of Austria. There was a piece of World War I, which did not make it entirely to the screen. They cut it out, and everything else was done in Prague. We went to Vienna to shoot the Academy of Fine Arts in Vienna because he wanted to be a painter, and unfortunately they did not accept him.
He was no Jack Bender.
He was not Jack Bender. That's why he became who he became. And it was a very interesting. It was a 4-hour miniseries. It was very challenging and interesting to
I'm sure.
To work in Europe, with some great people, great art directors, decorators, and I got an Emmy for that.
Yes, you have a Primetime Emmy for Hitler, the Rise of Evil, and then in your recent film, it's also about like the war and Hitler too. So you must have had some research already in your pocket that you could go back on. But
I had some research in my pocket. We can jump to
I'll find you.
I'll find you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Martha Coolidge, and Fred Roos, the producer, who worked with Coppola for many years and many movies, and did all the Godfathers. He's a legend. So they developed together the story of a love affair between a Christian boy and a Jewish girl. And it went to different phases of adaptations. And Fred Ward, the renowned Oscar winner, screenwriter, he wrote with Paul Newman, The Sting. And we went to Poland, and because I am from Poland and I went to the Academy of Fine Arts, they felt that maybe that would be a good idea. And I haven't worked in Poland since I left in the 80s. So, and I work in theater, so it was very different, but it was very interesting. And, we had a strong tradition of Polish cinema. So there was a lot of very well-trained people that we could hire. And I had entirely Polish crew. We had a Polish cinematographer, Aleksander Bruszyński, who is a friend of mine, and happened that we knew each other when we were teenagers. He left Poland, he emigrated to Denmark, and then years later we met in New York, where he directed movies like Studio 54 and several others. And then he moved to LA and I moved to LA, and then we did The Craft together. We'll go back to The Craft after. Yeah. And then I recommended him to Martha. I said, well, if you're shooting this in Poland, maybe you should have a Polish-American, cinematographer who understands the language and the culture. And it will be easier for you to operate and work in this environment. So being in Poland was very interesting. We went to Łódź. The story was written for Łódź. Łódź is a town in the middle of Poland. Warsaw is in the middle, and when you go west towards the German border, there's this town called Łódź, which was a center of weaving factories and textile. It was a huge textile empire, and the biggest client of all those huge textile factories was the Russian Tsar, because the Russian Tsar had 4 million conscripts in the army, so he had to dress them, and he had those officers that he had to dress, and so they were producing all those incredible uniforms, hussars, and that we know from movies and pictures. And we shot in one of those palaces that were adjacent to those huge factories.
Was that the cocktail party?
That was the cocktail party. It was the school. It was the school, the staircase, and the Christmas party.
Oh, yeah.
So this was part of his palace, which was a historical museum of the town Łódź. Cutting to the chase, so we scouted in that town, and this town was in the 20s, actually earlier in the turn of before World War One, during the Industrial Revolution. It was a center of, there were 3 nations. There were Poles, there were Germans, and there were Jews, Polish Jews, but they were assimilated, and there was a lot of Orthodox Jewish families too, but the more assimilated Jews were the ones who were in the business of textile businesses. So it's a story of this young boy. It starts in the 20s. We've seen the movie, yes. And his father works for a textile company, and he's industrialist. He doesn't produce, but he sells and buys. And they're in the music school. They're 10 years old, and each of them plays different instruments. And the boy tried to play the violin. He was not very good, but there was a great violinist girl who was Jewish, and she was incredible and talented. And the boy could not stand the fact that she's better than him. And years later, 10 years later, we meet them again. The boy went to Warsaw to study voice. Oh, there's a very interesting scene in the opera house where the teacher's brother, famous German opera singer, comes with a recital. And one of the kids, when they greet the singer after recital on stage, because the sister, who's the teacher, introduces the kids to her brother, and one of the girls said, when he asks, "Are you any of you is a singer?" And they point at this boy, and he has a beautiful voice, and he tells him, if you ever want to study voice, when your voice changes, study singing, come to Berlin. And we cut to 10 years later, the war starts, and his girlfriend is hiding in the school's attic, the attic where they played music, which was a kind of a secret place. And unfortunately, the Nazis, the Gestapo, find the family, and they take them to Auschwitz, the concentration camp. The boy works in the underground, and he's able to move to Berlin through his contacts through the sister of the tenor. And the story evolves what's happening, but maybe I should not tell the movie story because I don't think it makes sense. But it leads to this horrifying experience of this young man looking for his beloved through Auschwitz, where she was a violin player in the Auschwitz orchestra, women's orchestra. What the Nazis did is that they had orchestras in those concentration camps, and especially in Auschwitz, where for the pleasure of their pleasure and to disguise the camp, the orchestras would play when the trains with the prisoners came. The orchestras would play when the prisoners went to labor or to work in the fields or whatever they had to do.
Was that a build? Or was there?
Yes. Yeah. So we had the Auschwitz was the gate and all that, and then the build inside the Kaserne, which was the officers' club, and then that story evolves, goes to Berlin, and then finally there's the liberation where our hero encounters the British Army, and he finds out from them that the Camp Buchenwald, no, not Buchenwald, sorry, Bergen-Belsen. The Camp Bergen-Belsen was liberated by the British. And that's where she was, because he found out earlier through his then friend, the singer. And that was a build. Yes, that was a huge build with some CG extension and all that. And this was a camp that, when the British liberated the camp, they filmed everything they saw because of crimes and humanity. And Churchill saw some snippets of the documentaries and asked the war. The War Museum didn't exist in England, but he asked the military to make a documentary. And he personally wrote a letter to Alfred Hitchcock, who was in Los Angeles, to ask him if he can come back to London to edit this movie from all those hours of documentary after the liberation. And once this movie was cut and he has seen it, he said, this movie can never be shown to the public because it's so horrifying what humans can do to other humans and what the Germans did to the rest of Europe. Yeah. And because it was in the beginning of the Cold War and the Russians were the bad guys now, it was 47, I think, he decided not to release it and show it to the world because the relationship between England and Germany would have never been repaired because it was so horrifying. So on the basis of this documentary, I was able to restore Bergen-Belsen, the horrifying camp.
It's tough research to do.
It is a very tough research to do. And I had, through family, I had a little connections with the history of Poland. My father, as a young man, when he was 25 years old in Krakow, was one of the leaders and organizers of an underground organization that helped Jews. And for that, he was awarded the Righteous of the World by the Yad Vashem Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem. So
that's awesome.
I had it in my blood. I knew those stories. I knew people who when I was in Israel, I met some friends of my father that were part of the organization. They were Jewish. He was a goy, if you can say so, and this friendship lasted for all their lives, you know, because there was this incredible organization of Jews who were able in those camps help find people. They were mostly concentrating on professors and intellectuals who were trying to get out of Auschwitz. So the story was unfortunately known to me, you know, the Holocaust, and so the research was not unknown. It's never pleasant, this kind of research, but I kind of knew how to navigate that research.
Did the thing that carries through the films is the music. Were you given the music before? Like, were you giving some sort of something to inspire the design of it?
I knew a lot of the music because Martha was dealing with the music co-supervisor, and they were rehearsing, and I went to rehearsals and I saw what parts are going to be played live and what parts are not. The composer of the music was, because there were original pieces, of course, but then the overall music for the movie was composed by Jan Kaczmarek, another Polish artist who got an Oscar for, I forgot for which film, I'm so sorry. He lived in Los Angeles for many years and then he kind of went back to Poland. And I introduced him to Martha.
Maybe Finding Neverland? Was it
what?
Finding Neverland?
Yes, Finding Neverland. So he wrote the overall music. It was recorded, I think, in Prague. The last scene of the Carnegie Hall, Lyceum Hall, which doesn't exist anymore, that was shot in Krakow in the Philharmonics. And actually that's where Jan lives. So the music was known to me, pieces, that Martha would play, and we would go to rehearsals. I would go to rehearsals and hear some of the music.
And then, how many different theaters did you shoot in? Because I know, I mean, is it 3?
We shot.
The opera
there was 3 theaters in the story. One was the recital of the German singer. Then there was an opera of Wagner, and that was interesting because, as I mentioned, I designed operas. So the opera of Wagner, Tristan and Isolde, was staged actually in the same theater, but we shot it in such a way that you could probably not see that it's the same theater.
No, I didn't.
Because we changed the lighting, and we changed, of course, we had a big set for Tristan. There were 2 sets for Tristan. Our hero, young singer, played a sailor in the first act. Hitler and Goebbels and Himmler and all the other higher ups of the Reich who were there. And that was the first performance that he did, the young man. And then the third one was the concert, as I mentioned, in Lyceum Hall, part of Carnegie Hall. It was a smaller theater. And that was shot in the Philharmonics of Krakow.
Yeah, I mean, those theaters, I mean, they're opera houses, they're gorgeous.
Yeah.
They're gold, and I mean, just gorgeous.
Beautiful theater. This theater was built because Krakow was under Austro-Hungarian Empire. So Franz Josef, the Austrian Empire, was part of that culture, I can say so, the Viennese world.
And then is the character, Sarsgaard's character, Moser's house?
Yes. So Skarsgård played Benno Moser, who was that German singer, and he lip sync. But he's a fantastic actor.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have seen him from
him.
Chernobyl.
Yeah.
From Chernobyl and many other ones.
Yeah.
But Chernobyl was amazing. But Leo Sutter, who played the young singer, Robert, he sang.
Oh,
it is him who's singing.
Wow.
And yes,
I was going to say those 2 young actors. I mean, they're all good, but those 2 young actors.
And the kids,
good.
And the kids, the girl was a student at Juilliard, and she also was studying violin, but she also played in a couple of miniseries. I mean, not miniseries, series in New York. The British young boy, he learned how to play, so he didn't really play. And Adelaide Clemens, who played Rachel, did not play violin. But Robert had a fantastic voice, and he was able to sing all the songs and the operas, and so it was kind of interesting.
It's a beautiful film, and you always hope that love conquers all. So there's always kind of a silver lining.
Yes, you're right. Love conquers all, and it's a sweet movie, and I think it's a good movie to show now. With what we have, what's happening now in the Ukraine and the threat of war and all that, and because you're different and I'm different, and this whole thing of race, like Putin and Russians don't treat Ukrainians as their as a Slavic nation, so it's horrible. I think the moment to show this movie, because the whole generation of the World War II, those people are gone, and they're only their children, and the children are already old, So I hope that the younger audience will enjoy it and enjoy the romance of it.
Is it being re-released? I couldn't tell what.
No. The problem. We finished 5 years ago, but it never was shown. There was some problems with the distribution early on, and then when COVID hit, for 2 years they didn't want to release it. So we lost that opportunity just before COVID to release it, and they didn't want to. They wanted to release it when COVID just was starting, and why release a movie,
Yeah, yeah.
So then they released it.
It's on Amazon. I have Amazon Fire, so
Yes.
it's available
Yeah.
there for rent, and it really is a beautiful film and something to be very proud of for your history. I feel, especially, and since you've already done like, the other side, the Hitler side, it's kind of
Hitler
nice
side,
to do the
yes.
other side.
Yes, you're right. And it was interesting for me, as I mentioned, to work in Poland. I knew a lot of the locations. It was in different towns, but I knew Krakow very well because my family comes from there. My father and his sisters and his brother. So as a kid, I would visit that town quite often. And also I worked with an art director, supervisor art director, which was my friend. We went to art college together.
Oh.
And so I had two art directors. The supervising was a friend of mine, and the other art director I met. And then I had three set decorators and three construction coordinators. It was huge. We worked in three different towns. It was hundreds and hundreds of sets, and everything was period. And the attic was built. I mean, there was a lot of construction, but not on stage, but on locations. On stage, we hardly built anything. The modernistic apartment was created in a building, but it never looked like that. So, but some other locations we found, and we were able to dress them right. There's a whole bunch of furniture from that period. So some places were able to find the authenticity. That's what we search when we did a period movie.
And how wonderful to have a whole Polish crew. I mean,
yes,
it's great when people get to travel and do that. But if you're there and you with your background and being from there, that's fantastic.
And then we had, there are reenactors. Here we have reenactors of the Civil War, or the Indian Wars, but over there you have reenactors and guys dressing as Nazis or Wehrmacht, and other guys dressed as Polish military or Polish partisans, Right. So we were able to have all this. You saw the amount of cars and trucks. I built the three British American ambulances. The Americans gave equipment to the British when they landed in Dunkirk and other places towards the end of the war, when they started the invasion. So those Brits had British equipment and American equipment. Oh, wow. And all this equipment we were able to find with reenactors, even the small tank, the British tank that had a flamethrower that burned Bergen-Belsen, because the idea was the British burned Bergen-Belsen because it was so horrifying that they felt that it's better to destroy it than leave it as a monument.
Yeah. Well, it is probably. I bet then, then you do forget. So I think there's
a monument. Oh, and I didn't say about the
monument,
movie, because I mentioned about the movie that Hitchcock edited. The movie was released 50 years later in 2010 by HBO. So for 50 years, nobody could see that movie, the documentary about Bergen-Belsen. So you can see it now, and it's just horrifying.
I think now that you say that, I remember it, but I don't think I could. I don't think I watched it. I think I thought
you probably you would watch it.
Which is sad. You should, you have to face reality here, but
yes,
there's some things you. So what I found so interesting about Marek, besides his wonderful accent, was the way he described these projects to me as like history lessons. And that is so key as a production designer and a set decorator, thinking about doing these period pieces and like recreation of events, that when you do these sets, these recreations, there's so much pressure on the art department and set dressing for it to be accurate. And you really got to do your homework, and you really got to learn history and learn why that fabric was used then, and why, the structure looked the way it did, and for designers. I mean, it's fun. It's the fun part, and the research and endless digging till you find that right piece. And then, is it available? Is it in your budget? You never know. So, you're hoping and praying the whole time doing period pieces. They're not easy. They really are not easy. So his work has such a rich reflection of historical stories, and his designs are a huge piece of those stories. So I'm so glad and so thankful that I got to speak with him and his wonderful storytelling. I greatly enjoyed it, and I hope you did too. Next week, as I said, I have set decorator Kimberly Leonard, whose work you can currently see on Hulu's The Dropout. And when I was watching The Dropout, I was so jealous of whoever got to decorate it, and then I looked it up and I saw that it was my friend. I've known her a while, so we talk about, she has done the Mosquito Coast, and she did like a little bit of Free Guy, and she did Jane the Virgin. I mean, the crazy ones, which was Robin Williams' last series. So we get into all that. So that's next week. I hope you got an earful. I'm Kim Wanup for Decorating Pages. Floating always feels better when it's free. Stogie Floaty Luxury Pull Float, available now with free shipping with promo code FLOATFREE on Etsy and stogiefloaty.com.